quorum being present, the subcommittee will be in order. The subcommittee is meeting today for consideration of 10 bills aimed at enhancing the Department of Homeland Security's coordination with all levels of law enforcement and combating the evolving threats from America's adversaries on U.S. soil. And these bills are H.R. 2158, the Countering Transnational Repression Act of 2025, H.R. 2139, the Strengthening State and Local Efforts to Counter Transnational Repression Act, H.R. 2116, the Law Enforcement Support and Counter Transnational Repression Act, H.R. 1327, the Syria Terrorism Threat Assessment Act, H.R. 1508, the DHS Special Events Program and Support Act, H.R. 2212, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and Law Enforcement Support Act, H.R. 2285, the DHS Basic Training Accreditation Improvement Act, and H.R. 2259, the National Strategy for School Security Act of 2025, H.R. 1736, the Generative AI Terrorism Risk Assessment Act, and H.R. 2261, the Strengthening Oversight of DH Intelligence Act. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the subcommittee in recess at any point. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, any request for recorded votes may be postponed. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good afternoon and welcome to the first Counterterrorism and Intelligence Subcommittee Markup of the 119th Congress. And I want to begin by thanking the ranking member for his cooperation and coordination in preparing for this important subcommittee markup. The bills my Republican colleagues and I offer today are timely and critical pieces of legislation that I believe all members of the committee will readily support. I commend my colleagues for their essential and common sense measures, including the Law Enforcement Support and Transnational Repression Act, the Syria Terrorism Threat Assessment Act, and the National Strategy for School Security Act. These bills deal with issues ranging from foreign terror threats to addressing the threat of transnational repression in the United States by the Chinese Communist Party and the Iranian regime, which has grown significantly in the last few years. These bills also demonstrate an effort to further safeguard our homeland. And I also want to thank our minority counterparts, both for their collaboration on the bills being considered today and for the measures they have put forward to counter terror threats and transnational repression. I'd now like to recognize the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you. Today we're considering 10 bills that will make our country safer. I want to thank Chairman Pfluger and his staff for their partnership in negotiating this bipartisan package of legislation and for starting the new Congress out on a bipartisan and productive note here in the subcommittee. And I look forward to supporting all of the bills being marked up today. Included in this bipartisan package are 3 bills to address the pressing challenge of transnational repression in the United States. Journalists, activists, and political dissidents should not have to fear for their lives while on U.S. soil. And these bills will strengthen our ability to keep people safe from foreign nations who seek to do them harm for exercising their right to free speech. And I'll speak more on those bills, including my own, when we get to them. Today, we're also going to consider the DHS Special Events Program and Support Act, introduced by former subcommittee member Dina Titus of Nevada, which will ensure that DHS may continue providing risk assessments and support to high-profile special events across the United States. Events like the Super Bowl, Boston Marathon, and upcoming World Cup require state and local officials to plan and manage complex security to respond to potential threats. And Ms. Titus's bill will ensure that DHS is authorized to continue that support work to those local officials, protecting Americans and others at those events. The Strengthening Oversight of DHS Intelligence Act, as introduced by Mr. Hernandez of Puerto Rico, is a common sense bill that requires the DHS Secretary and DHS Chiefs for Privacy and Civil Rights and Civil Liberties to coordinate on ensuring that DHS intelligence is shared, retained, and disseminated in a manner that protects individuals' rights. The DHS Basic Training Accreditation Improvement Act of 2025 is offered by Ms. Poe of New Jersey. It is an important bill because DHS is the largest federal law enforcement agency, and her bill works to put all of DHS's law enforcement basic training programs on a path to accreditation. Today, we will also consider 6 Republican-led bills. These bills all enhance our homeland security and tackle evolving threats from terrorism. Representative Luttrell's bill, the Syria Threat Assessment Act, focuses on countering bad actors in Syria, a hotbed for ISIS, and recruiting for a range of radical Islamic by terrorists, generative artificial intelligence. Representative McKenzie's bill, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and Law Enforcement Support Act, and Representative Gonzalez's bill, the National Strategy for School Security Act of 2025, an issue that is particularly resonant for me as a former public school teacher and a parent of young kids as well. So I look forward to supporting all of these bills. I thank the members for their work on them, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate productively going forward. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2158, the Countering Transnational Repression Act of 2025. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 2158, offered by Mr. Pfluger, to amend the Homeland Security Act of
Without
2000.
objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and it is considered read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize myself to speak in favor of this bill. In the 118th Congress, the Committee on Homeland Security held multiple hearings to examine the threat of transnational repression in the United States, which has grown significantly in the last few years. The committee has heard testimony from victims of transnational repression, including but not limited to Masih Alinejad, Enes Kanter Freedom, and Dr. Bob Fu, actually a constituent of mine in Midland, Texas, and all of whom have been egregiously targeted on U.S. soil for criticizing authoritarian regimes. Transnational repression is the act of a foreign government or an individual acting on behalf of a foreign government targeting anyone, an individual, or anyone in a community in any other country using violence, assassinations, the threat of violence, digital threats, intimidation, smear campaigns, or the manipulation of legal processes to harass and intimidate individuals that are critical of the nation acting as aggressor. The Chinese Communist Party, the Iranian regime, and other malign entities have reached beyond their borders to silence their citizens and Americans who defend human rights and advocate for free speech. These hostile acts directly challenge our nation's sovereignty and the rule of law. DHS must take steps to recognize, assess, and help address this threat, thereby reducing the risk to the people of the United States. One of the bills we are marking up today, H.R. 2158, is an important measure that would authorize a dedicated transnational repression working group within DHS to analyze and monitor transnational repression and related terrorism threats, and DHS to take actions to prevent the repression. The Director of Homeland Security Investigations would appoint the head of a working group, as HSI already works closely with federal and other partners to investigate allegations of transnational repressions. I want to thank Representative Evans for his attention to this critical matter and commend his work on the legislation to implement an essential public service awareness campaign to educate the public on the issue of transnational repression threats and the resources available to the victims of transnational repression. I think this is especially critical now, given the operation of an illegal overseas police station of the CCP in New York City. According to the Justice Department, the CCP, through its repressive security apparatus, established a secret physical presence in New York City to monitor and intimidate dissidents and those critical of its government. And the CCP's actions go far beyond the bounds of acceptable nation-state conduct. Last Congress, I visited and met with the heads of NYPD's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division to discuss a myriad of security issues, including transnational repression and the NYPD's work related to the Chinese government police stations in Manhattan. It is paramount that we decisively defend the freedoms of all those living in our country from authoritarian repression. I'm also proud to support Ranking Member Magaziner's measure today, H.R. 2139, to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to prioritize strengthening state and local law enforcement capabilities to counter transnational repression and related terrorism threats. All three of these bills passed out of the committee last Congress, and since then, we have made some minor adjustments to the bills to improve the practicality and implementation of them. I thank my colleagues on the subcommittee for moving these critical pieces of legislation. Collectively, these measures reflect a bipartisan commitment to safeguarding American values of free speech and human rights in the face of the CCP and other foreign actors' malign activities. Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 2158, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, The motion is to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2139, the Strengthening State and Local Efforts to Counter Transnational Repression Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 2139, offered by Mr. Magaziner.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and it is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, is recognized for 5 minutes on the measure.
Thank you, Chairman. Throughout the world, those who dare to speak out against repressive governments are met with harassment, imprisonment, and even violence. Those same repressive governments do not just keep to their own borders. The United States is a safe haven for free speech and those fleeing political persecution, and we must have no tolerance for foreign governments targeting people in our country. Last January, during this subcommittee's hearing on transnational repression, we heard from witnesses Bob Fu and Enes Kanter Freedom about their firsthand accounts of how they were targeted in the U.S. by foreign governments attempting to silence their voices through physical and cyber harassment and intimidation. Foreign governments such as China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, India, and others are among the largest perpetrators of transnational repression. Just last month, an illegal agent of the Chinese Communist Party was sentenced to prison in New York for his participation in a campaign to threaten, harass, and intimidate a U.S. resident and his family and repatriate them back to China. And in October, an unsealed Department of Justice indictment, we learned that a member of Iran's Republican Guard participated in a murder-for-hire scheme to murder a U.S. citizen and a journalist in the U.S. who was critical of Iran's human rights abuses. Today, we are considering 3 important bills to help crack down on transnational repression in the United States, including my bill, H.R. 2139, the Strengthening State and Local Efforts to Combat Transnational Repression Act. My bill will ensure that state and local law enforcement get the training they need to identify, pursue, and investigate transnational repression in the communities they serve. Understand, state and local law enforcement agencies are often the eyes and ears best suited to identify and disrupt transnational repression, but they need specialized training in order to know what they are seeing. Under this bill, the Department of Homeland Security will establish transnational repression threat training for state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement agencies, including through fusion centers. The bill also requires that the training include how to identify instances of transnational repression, what information should be collected and retained, how to identify suspected targets or victims of transnational repression, best practices for victim safety, and best practices for engaging targeted individuals and communities. The bill will also require that this training be developed in a manner that upholds privacy, civil rights, and civil liberty protections, something that I know we agree on as we work together to include this relevant language in the bipartisan bills we are considering today. In addition to supporting my bill and asking other members to do so, I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of the other 2 transnational repression bills that we're considering today, Chairman Pfluger's Combating Transnational Repression Act, which we just passed, and also Representative Evans' bill, the Law Enforcement Support and Counter Transnational Repression Act. This bill will give people who are victims of transnational repression a safe way to report their victimization to DHS through the establishment of a public awareness campaign and hotline. And I hope that given the news regarding the potential shuttering of the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, we can work together on ensuring that these protections are still embedded in the department's efforts. I want to once again thank Chairman Pfluger, Representative Evans, Representative Goldman, who is a co-sponsor of all these bills as well. This was a bipartisan package that we developed together in the last Congress and passed through committee. I'm glad that we're sticking with it and doing it again because there are a lot of people out there who are counting on us, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 2139, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2116, the Law Enforcement Support and Counter Transnational Repression Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 2116, offered by Mr. Evans of Colorado.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and it is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Evans, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for helping to lead this subcommittee markup and for consideration of my bill, H.R. 2116, the Law Enforcement Support and Counter-Transnational Repression Act. As we've seen highlighted today, we've had multiple instances in the last few years where malign nations like the Chinese Communist Party, Russia, and Iran, and their actors and organized crime groups have conspired to conduct acts of transnational repression or foreign intimidation on U.S. soil. And they're designed to target Americans and suppress free speech. And I want to be absolutely clear. The United States will not allow any foreign government to violate our sovereignty or challenge the rule of law. And so I'm proud to introduce H.R. 2116, the Law Enforcement Support and Transnational Repression Act, which instructs the DHS to create a public service announcement campaign designed to educate our diaspora communities on the threats posed by transnational repression. In addition, this bill requires DHS to post the FBI's transnational hotline in their public service campaigns so that victims can step out of the shadows and help law enforcement help them. As the ranking member just highlighted, local law enforcement often is the eyes and the ears of our communities, and it's critical that we have the ability to build that trust in those community relationships. And I know that because I was a local law enforcement officer in the Denver metro area for over a decade. And so I know how critical it is to support victims and strengthen public safety by equipping law enforcement agencies with the knowledge and the tools they need to identify current threats, build those relationships with the communities that they serve so that perpetrators can be identified and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which ultimately prevents harm in our communities. The Denver metro area is home to many diverse and resilient diaspora and immigrant communities who've shared with me deeply moving stories of fleeing authoritarian regimes and malicious organizations in their home countries. And so I'm committed to ensuring that people in my community can enjoy personal safety and their First Amendment rights as they pursue the American dream. This legislation, along with the bills offered by Chairman Pfluger and Ranking Member Magaziner, are critical first steps in making sure that American neighborhoods are protected and are equipped with the tools necessary to protect one another and counter transnational repression and other acts of foreign intimidation on U.S. soil. And with that, Mr. Chairman, yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 2116, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 1327, the Syria Terrorism Threat Assessment Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 1327, offered by Mr. Luttrell.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Luttrell, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Pfluger and Ranking Member Magaziner, for bringing this critical bill before the Counterterrorism and Intelligence Subcommittee today. I'd also like to thank Mr. Correa for working alongside me on this piece of legislation. The last few months have shed light on the political uncertainty Syria is currently faced with. The region remains volatile and has become a breeding ground for violent extremist groups. The instability has allowed terrorist organizations to establish footholds, exacerbating national security challenges. The malign groups are using every tool at their disposal and sending bad actors our way. The Syrian Terrorism Threat Assessment Act ensures the Department of Homeland Security conducts an assessment of terrorist threats to the United States posed by individuals in Syria with an affiliation to a foreign terrorist organization or a specially designated global terrorist organization. By doing so, we can better examine and mitigate emerging threats from these regions. Foreign jihadist networks and other extremist groups are actively exploiting online platforms and other means to remotely radicalize and mobilize individuals to help plan and carry out terrorist attacks on American soil. Thank you again, Chairman and Ranking Member, for bringing this important bill to the subcommittee. Once again, thank you, Mr. Correa, for supporting this. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 1327, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 1508, the DHS Special Events Program and Support Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 1508, offered by Mr. Magaziner, to amend the
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really here to present a bill that is sponsored by Congresswoman Dina Titus of Nevada, a former member of this subcommittee, along with Richard Hudson of North Carolina, and our own Nellie Poe of New Jersey. This is the H.R. 1508 DHS Special Events Program and Support Act. This act would authorize the Special Event Assessment Rating Program, known as the SEER program, within DHS, a program which has done great work for public safety all across the country. From state fairs to the College Football National Championship to New Year's Eve in Times Square, large gathering events require security planning to ensure that attendees are kept safe. Under the SEER program, state, local, tribal, and territorial officials may request a risk assessment to determine the likelihood of potential threats, like a terrorist attack or other hazard, to a specific event. For events with a rating of 1, the most serious rating, DHS helps coordinate the security resources. The DHS Special Events Program and Support Act also seeks to improve the SEER program by standardizing the process by which federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial officials can request a SEER rating, and allowing for expedited assessment or reassessment of special event ratings. Just some of the bill's supporters include the U.S. Travel Association, the National Emergency Management Association, the International Association of Emergency Managers, and the National Football League. Mr. Chairman, I thank my colleagues for supporting this bipartisan measure that works to provide the best protection for all of the large-scale events that Americans enjoy across the country, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 1508, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2212, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and Law Enforcement Support Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 2212, offered by Mr. McKenzie, to
Without
amend the
objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and it is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More than 2 decades after the attacks on September 11th, 2001, terrorists around the country still are threats to our safety. Our national security relies on the ability to share the right information with the right people at the right time. Accomplishing this requires consistent collaboration among federal, state, local, tribal, territorial entities, as well as the private sector and international partners. For years, DHS has consistently struggled to share information effectively, though, necessitating legislative action to address the issue. In fact, it was just several years ago when various inspectors general, including the Department of Homeland Security and Justice, completed a report titled Review of Domestic Sharing of Counterterrorism Information that noted that DHS intelligence enterprise was not as effective and valuable as it could be. This was attributed to a lack of unity throughout DHS, the intelligence enterprise, various staffing issues within DHS's Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and problems with the review and approval process of internal intelligence products and issues accessing classified systems and locations. The report further stated that the DHS intelligence enterprise was fragmented, with elements operating independently with few repercussions of incentives to coordinate better outside of actual events. That was their quote. So underscoring the necessity for legislative action. These challenges continue to exist, in which the sharing of counterterrorism information among law enforcement agencies, and in particular within DHS, could be strengthened. It's important that we work to share this information effectively so that DHS components understand each other's roles, responsibilities, contributions, and especially the involvement of multiple entities when they're trying to work together. So one way that we can do this is through HR 2212, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and Law Enforcement Support Act. It's a critical step to address these gaps and improve coordination within DHS. The bill, which unanimously passed the House on a bipartisan basis previously, would codify DHS's Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program to enhance needed interagency participation in the program, and again, bring together all of this information so that people understand where it's coming from and they can better work together and understand the overall big picture of things. DHS analysts within the department, intelligence component like Customs and Border Patrol, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Secret Service would work with other eligible components, and they would all be eligible to participate. As a result, this would further increase coordination and communication on border security, terrorism, and other threats to Homeland Security, which would in turn, obviously, lead to a more complete picture of threats around Homeland Security. So I think it's a great improvement, a step that I think we should all be on board with supporting, and I appreciate, again, the opportunity to talk about this important legislation today. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, HR 2212, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up HR 2285, the DHS Basic Training Accreditation Improvement Act of 2025. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
HR 2285, offered by Ms. Poe.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member, Mr. Magaziner. Let me just begin by saying that the Department of Homeland Security is the largest federal law enforcement agency with nearly 80,000 officers and agents. Like all law enforcement, DHS officers and agents must successfully complete basic training programs. The Federal Law Enhancement Training Accreditation, or FLECTA, board is an independent body charged with accrediting all federal law enforcement training. And although FLECTA accreditation is not required, many federal law enforcement training academies are accredited, including the Transportation Security Administration Training Center in my home state of New Jersey. Accreditation improves the quality of training, minimizes liability and training costs, and supports organizational and operational success. Unfortunately, not all of DHS basic training programs are accredited. Some have not been for years, in fact. My bill seeks to change just that. It requires DHS to report to Congress annually on the accreditation status of each of its basic training program until all of them are accredited. For programs that are not accredited, DHS must report the reasons for obtaining or maintaining accreditation, the activities, if any, taken to achieve accreditation, and the expected timeline to achieve accreditation. My bill also directs DHS to engage in research to help state, local, tribals, and territorial law enforcement officers better access training opportunities, including those that enhance national preparedness and responses to terrorism. Our brave law enforcement officers deserve our very best. My bill will improve the law enforcement training program to give officers the tools to continue to keep our communities safe. I want to thank all of my colleagues for your consideration and support of this bill. Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 2285, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2259, the National Strategy for School Security Act of 2025. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 2259, offered by Mr. Tony Gonzalez of Texas.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased that the subcommittee has convened today to mark up H.R. 2259, the bipartisan National School Safety, the National Strategy for School Security Act. Over 3 years ago, we had the worst shooting in Texas history in Uvalde, in my district. At that time, we were scrambling. I remember very vividly, I got a call from the gentleman sitting next to me, Morgan Luttrell, and he asked me, what could I do? What could he do to help? I previously had gotten a call from local law enforcement, and they didn't have a place to sleep that night. And so I asked him, I'm like, yeah, you can help me by helping get 100 cots. And guess what? The next day, magically, Morgan Luttrell was in Uvalde, Texas, delivering 100 cots. Why do I tell that story? It's not fair. I was a newly minted member of Congress, and he was a private citizen. It's not fair that that was the response that was needed during that time. Since then, there was a critical incident review that took place. Multiple reports have indicated some of the things that could be fixed, but honestly, nothing has changed. If the same thing were to occur in his district, I'd be calling him and asking him what I could do to help. We have a duty and an obligation to review and take these reports and findings serious. My bill does exactly that. The bill requires better federal coordination efforts across our agencies. The lack of coordination at the federal level has been highlighted as a major shortcoming in school security posture. My bill would direct the Department of Homeland Security to take into account the resources and findings of federal agencies related to school security and emergency preparedness. It's no different than a hurricane hits. When a hurricane hits, DHS sends FEMA and it's all hands on deck. A school shooting is no different than that. By submitting a national strategy, we update this annually to serve as a framework to secure elementary and secondary schools nationwide. From this, our school districts nationwide can better develop and improve their own emergency plans to keep our kids safe. I encourage all my colleagues in this subcommittee to support this common sense bill. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill H.R. 2259 to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 1736, the Generative AI Terrorism Risk Assessment Act. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 1736, offered by Mr. Pfluger.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. It is considered read and open to amendment at any point. I now recognize myself to speak in favor of the bill. The Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence recently held a hearing to examine how foreign terrorist organizations use the internet, online networks, and generative AI or Gen AI to recruit and radicalize lone wolf actors. The threat of this radicalization has grown significantly over the last decade. The committee heard testimony from police experts Dr. Aaron Zellen, Dr. David Gartenstein Ross, and Mr. Daniel Flesh on how FTOs use the internet and online networks for radicalization and recruitment. The panel of experts all agreed that FTO's use of Gen AI has the potential to impact our national security significantly. Gen AI is defined as a subset of artificial intelligence that uses generative models to produce text, images, videos, or other forms of data. FTOs use Gen AI for online radicalization by producing highly convincing videos that fabricate events and manipulate the perception of potential recruits. Known terrorist organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda have gone as far as to have workshops and train members of their organizations on its use while stressing the effectiveness of the technology. It's important that DHS carry out common sense threat assessments to determine how we can better combat this issue and ultimately safeguard our homeland. One of the bills we are marking up today, H.R. 1736, is an important measure that would require the Secretary of Homeland Security to conduct annual assessments on terrorism threats to the U.S. posed by terrorist organizations like ISIS and al-Qaeda, utilizing or attempting to utilize generative artificial intelligence applications. I think this is a common sense bill, and it's important and timely given the ISIS-inspired car ramming terror attack we had just months ago in New Orleans, with the suspect not only being an American citizen, but a former member of the military who was influenced and fell victim to online radicalization. Several days after the attack, ISIS noted in their weekly newsletters that the ISIS propaganda had inspired the attack and praised ISIS backers as critical to encouraging and promoting further terrorist attacks against America. I want to thank all my colleagues on the subcommittee for advancing this crucial piece of legislation, and I believe it reaffirms our commitment to safeguarding our country and our citizens while effectively countering the enduring and emerging threats posed by jihadi and other terrorist groups targeting our nation. Does anyone else wish to, I yield back. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 1736, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2261, the Strengthening Oversight of DHS Intelligence Act. The bill was circulated in advance, and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate.
H.R. 2261, offered by Mr. Hernandez, to amend the Homeland Security
Without
Act.
objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and it is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ranking Member. I am pleased that today the subcommittee is considering my bill, H.R. 2261, the Strengthening Oversight of DHS Intelligence Act. Since its inception, DHS's Office of Intelligence and Analysis, or INA, has been the sole office charged with delivering Homeland Security information and intelligence to state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement. State, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement are on the front lines working to keep Americans safe. And to do the best job possible, it is critical that they receive reliable intelligence, particularly during terrorist attacks or natural disasters. The DHS intelligence enterprise delivers that critical information. The Strengthening Oversight of DHS Intelligence Act ensures that the information and intelligence distributed by DHS to protect our communities does not infringe upon Americans' constitutional rights. There must be oversight mechanisms and safeguards to protect the privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties of Americans in the production and dissemination of DHS intelligence. This bill requires that all DHS intelligence products be reviewed by the DHS Chief Privacy Officer and the DHS Officer for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. Additionally, my bill would require the Privacy and Civil Rights and Civil Liberties officers train senior DHS intelligence personnel on privacy rights, civil rights, and civil liberties protections. Put simply, under my bill, DHS intelligence information that is shared, retained, and disseminated must be done in a manner consistent with the protection of Americans' rights. Now, Mr. Chairman, I understand that it is being reported that the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties has been shut down through reductions in the workforce. I know that you see the value of DHS offices and components coordinating with the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties to safeguard individuals' privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, as evident by the coordination clause included in your bill being marked up today, the Generative AI Terrorism Risk Assessment Act. So I'll just say that I hope we can all work together on maintaining this important function. I thank my colleagues for their support on this measure, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? Hearing none, the question is on reporting the bill, H.R. 2261, to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the staff is authorized to make any required technical or conforming changes to reflect the actions of the subcommittee. This concludes our subcommittee markup, and I just want to say that while this markup may have looked easy, and it went smoothly, and it didn't take a lot of time, it was anything but easy in the background. And I want to thank the ranking member. I want to thank both staffs from the majority and the minority for working hard to come to an agreement and to really set the tone. This is the first subcommittee markup on this committee, and I think it does set the tone that on this particular topic that we want to safeguard American interests, that we want to do the best for the homeland security of this nation, that we can come together in a bipartisan way. And I hope that this will lead us down a path of vigorous, rigorous debate on things that we may have differences on, but with the end goal of expecting a better product. And when we can come together, like you've seen today, with 10 bills that are all bipartisan, that pass by voice, then that's a great way to be able to do business. And I hope the rest of our colleagues on other committees can also look at this as an example. Lastly, I want to thank the staff director for this subcommittee, Mr. Michael Corrin, who this is his last markup, and if you don't mind giving him a round of applause for his help and professionalism. This concludes the consideration of the bills noticed by the committee for today. There being no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.